I just, no problem, yeah. I just,
Thank you. I don't know what I would do if I
please go ahead, I'll hurry.
All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. We're going to try to keep to our schedule as best we can because I know we got really off schedule during the spiritual retreat, and I don't want to let that happen this weekend. So I'm not singling anybody out. I'm just Mark Collins. Just kidding. No, I'm just teasing. We're teasing you, Mark. So before we get started with what's on the actual schedule, I've asked our brother Daniel Welker, who's the preacher at the Wasatch Church of Christ, to come and do an opening prayer, and then we'll get going with the weekend's events. Daniel?
Let us pray. Father God, we come before you thanking you for this time that we can come together and learn together and grow together. And we ask that you be with us this weekend as we learn about grief and how to deal with it and how to help others deal with it. We ask that we will take what we learn here this weekend and use it for your glory. And I ask that you bless our time together of fellowship and learning, and we ask all these things in your Son's name. Amen.
Alrighty. As you see on the schedule, we have our greeting Devo intro first. So, hello. There's the greeting. Welcome, everyone. But Mike did ask me to do our Devo, short for devotional, as you know. So if you have your Bibles, I'd like you to turn with me to Psalm chapter 34. Now, when I think of grief, one passage that comes to my mind is Psalm 34, verses 17 and 18. Now, Psalm 34, 17 and 18. I was asked to repeat it by my daughter. A passage that, as I was getting ready to say, a passage that comes to my mind is Psalm 34, verses 17 and 18. Now, we aren't going to spend a lot of time with this one, but I do want to begin by reading it. Again, Psalm 34, beginning in verse 17, we read, "The righteous cry, and the Lord hears, and delivers them out of all their troubles. The Lord is near to the brokenhearted, and saves those who are crushed in spirit." Now, I think this passage is about grief in some ways. But more specifically, it's about God's people being in grief. Now, that phrase, the righteous, it's not in the original text, but from the context, this seems to be who it's referring to. This is the Psalm of David, and the righteous are those people who are right with God. Now, I believe in verses 17 and 18, there are 2 points here about how God is with us during our time of grief. Point number 1, verse 17, is how God responds to our grief as he delivers us out of our troubles. But that point begins in that first line. The righteous cry, and the Lord hears. Now, that crying, it's not weeping, literal crying. It's that idea of crying out to God. We're in the midst of a difficult circumstance, and we're crying out to God, saying whatever might come to our mind. And of course, we do that through prayer, but the point of that first line is that God hears it. He pays attention to our cries. And so when we cry out to God in our time of trouble, we can trust that he will hear our cries. going on into the next line, the text says, the Lord delivers the righteous, or delivers the righteous out of all their troubles. Now, I think we know what that word delivers means, as far as God is concerned. It's the idea of rescuing. And then our troubles, it's those difficulties that we face in our life. And so when we cry out to God, He hears us. And He delivers us. Now, what the text doesn't tell us is how He does that. And so there's any number of ways He could do that. But the point is, He does deliver us out of all our troubles. He helps us find a way through the things that are bringing difficulty into our lives. Now, putting all that together, verse 17, the point here seems to be that the Lord delivers the righteous out of their troubles, out of their difficulties. And so we come into verse 18. The point, just to state it once, the Lord is near to the righteous who are brokenhearted and crushed in spirit. We see that beginning in the first line. The Lord is near to the brokenhearted. And I think we're familiar with that idea of nearness. It's being close. Now, that idea of being applied to the Lord, it's a phrase that indicates that God is present. We're going through those difficult times. We're brokenhearted. God is present. But another question we have to ask of this verse is, well, what does brokenhearted mean? In this particular context, it's discouragement. We're discouraged for whatever reason to the point of having lost our confidence. And so the idea here is that God is present in the lives of those who have been discouraged and lost confidence. And sometimes that happens when we're grieving. We become discouraged. We lose confidence. But the encouragement here is that when you are discouraged and have lost your confidence, you can know that God is present. But the text doesn't stop there. This text also tells us He saves those who are crushed in spirit. Now, the thought we find in the second line of verse 18 is parallel to the first line. But it's parallel in the fact that the second line also expresses the fact that God brings those who are crushed in spirit through their troubles. But again, we have to ask, who are these people who are crushed in spirit? These are people who have lost hope. And again, that could happen in a time of grieving where we lose all hope. But again, God brings us through those times when it seems like we have no hope. So, God will bring us through those times of hopelessness that we all experience in our lives at one time or another. Well, how does this apply to grief? These two verses that we've very briefly looked at. Taken together, what these verses teach us is that when we are grieving, God hears us when we cry out to Him. And He's present in our lives in order to bring us through those times of hopelessness during our time of grief. Again, we spent very short time with these verses. And part of the reason we spent a short time with these verses is because over the course of this weekend, Mike is going to tell us more about these things. I've also been asked to introduce Mike. Who is Mike McPherson? He corrected me last year. It's not McPherson, it's McPherson.
Persons are poor, the McPhersons are rich.
The McPhersons are poor, the McPhersons are rich. But Mike sent me just a little bit of information about himself that I'd like to share with you. Mike McPherson, he's also known as Coach Mike McPherson. And part of the reason for that is that he coached high school and middle school basketball, and he's also taught Bible for 44 years in Christian education. Now, during his teaching and coaching career, he has served in part-time youth ministry for 28 years with 3 different congregations. At present, Coach Mike attends Woodson Chapel Church of Christ, and he's serving in the adult involvement ministry. During his life, Coach Mike has been on Bible land trips. He's been to Israel, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Turkey, and he's actually been to the mountain range where it's believed that Noah's Ark landed. And this coming December, he will be headed back to Israel on another trip to that part of the world. Now, something else he's going to tell us about during part of this seminar is that after 36 years of marriage, his wife Lisa passed away in 2018 from ALS. After that point, Coach Mike retired from coaching and went on to give basketball lessons to players of all ages. Coach Mike also has a 14-year-old grandson, Mason, and an 11-year-old granddaughter, Maddie. As far as his hobbies go, things he enjoys doing, his favorite one is coaching his granddaughter's basketball team. So at this time, Coach Mike will come speak to us as we begin this seminar. Mike?
Thank you, David. I think most of them know me, though. Been out here a bunch of times, and I get them all mixed up now. Is that too loud? We need to pull that down. Is that all right? So I come out here always with bittersweet thoughts. I love the trips out here, but we're staying in the hotel, Sure Stay, and we stayed in Holiday Inn Express back 10 years ago this summer. And Lisa and I were jogging. Well, I was sprinting. I don't appreciate the laughter that just went through sarcastically this audience. And she got hit by a wasp. And she said her skin never felt the same. And then a year later, she was diagnosed with ALS. So this is a bittersweet trip for me each time. And I love coming out here, but it's also a difficult trip. And I know looking at the topics, looks like it's going to really be an uplifting weekend, doesn't it? Aren't you glad you came? But it really will not be depressing. Even my lesson on depression that's coming up now, it will not be depressing. It will be, as Dave was alluding to, it'll be something about hope in the middle of junk, which we all have to go through. Now, I think I delivered this lesson in 2015, I think. I'm not sure. I can't remember. And the reason I think that is people have been asking me to speak on depression for a while, and we were flying in the airplane. I'm pretty sure it was 15 coming here. And I said, Lisa, this is going to be a downer. You know, we're going out there for a mission trip. And she was sitting behind me. I remember she was sitting with one of the other moms. And she said, that's what they need. I said, okay. I think I did. But you probably didn't pay attention. Now, some of you are probably sleeping during the lesson. You got your special chair. And I don't want to interrupt those naps today. But you probably didn't take real good notes. So if I did present it, it's a lot different now, and it's changed a little bit. So I've shared with y'all before, I had the all-American Christian life. I just really had a neat upbringing. Not that everything was perfect, but when I think back on it, since I didn't deal with tragedy and divorce and a lot of death, especially in immediate family, it was really a great upbringing. I had the typical downfalls and self-esteem issues that every kid has growing up. But it was really a neat time. And then meeting this good look, she's really good looking, isn't she? But ladies, you also see how lucky she is. Again, the sarcastic laughter. This is why I didn't want to come out here, Michael. I did not want to come back out here. I knew this would be it. And so I fell in love with her real quick when I met her at a church that I'd started going to. And fast forward, we had these two knuckleheads. And even though we had had some tough times, we had two kids in our youth group that got killed. One of them was real close to my son there on the left. Still, as far as immediate family, things were pretty good. And that's going to all fall apart in January of 2004. Went back to school for the first day of class on the 6th. And when I woke up that morning, something had happened to my brain. Now, if you saw Tom Cruise being interviewed by Matt Lowry years ago, I love Tom Cruise Mission Impossible movies, but he knows nothing about mental illness. And he just ripped people that claim there is depression. I say, Tom, I really like your movies, and you could survive better than me in those movies, but you didn't walk in my shoes. And something during the night had happened to my brain, and don't know what it was. But I woke up, and I was having these quick flashes of horrible, terrible things because of some stuff I'll tell you about later. I don't remember what they were. I just remember they were blasphemous, they were sacrilegious. I found out later there's a name to this mental illness, and it attacks what's sacred to you. It's almost like it's alive. And you know how when you're watching, when they'll show real quick clip like this, boom, you can't even really see what's going on, boom. That's what my brain was doing. But it wasn't things like that. It was horrible things. And just boom, but just over and over again, just like that. And I was trying to teach, and it's like I'm trying to teach, and all this stuff is happening like this. And I've never experienced anything like this. So I get through the day, and I think, okay, I'll be okay in the morning. And I didn't tell Lisa. I thought, I'll be okay. I woke up, boom, 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 it's happening again. And I get through first period, and I called her, and I said, Lisa, something's wrong with me. And I went home, and I didn't go back the rest of the semester. And I plunged into true clinical depression, and within a couple of weeks, I was suicidal. And the reason I went to that point was the images made me think that I was not of God, that I was never of God, that I was a hoax, a fake, and that I was going to go to hell. And when you think you're going to heaven, and then you suddenly think you're going to hell, that can be depressing. In fact, one thing that's killing me to think about people in hell, it's not the fire, it's the depression of never getting out. That's what I think about when I think of hell, because I felt like I was in a hell without the fire. And nothing like this had ever happened to me. And I think if I had known what I know now, I don't think I'd have fallen so far. I just didn't know what was going on. And so that day was, it became a very black day in my life. Now, if you have not experienced depression, I'm really glad you're here, because some people think it's just the blues. Now, the blues is when your team doesn't win, the girl didn't go out with you to the prom, you made a bad grade, stuff like that. That's not depression. Everybody has the blues. We all have times we get down a little bit. Depression is a blanket of despair that covers you, and you have no hope. It's a hopelessness. In the blues, like whenever this team right here loses, I get aggravated. But I get over it real quick. I like for them to win. And if they lose a real big one, I'll be, oh, rats, that's terrible. I hate going to school the next day and hearing the kids, ridicule the loss. But that's not depression. The Bible does talk about depression. Remember when Elijah was up on Mount Carmel, and if you go to Israel with us, you get to see that. We're hoping we'll still get to go after stuff happening now, I don't know. But Elijah went a day's journey in the wilderness, sat down under a tree, and he asked that he might die. He said, God, take my life. I can't tell you how many times I begged God to kill me. Over and over again. It's hard for me even to think about this because those of you that were here, the first time we came out in 2000, and I actually have a DVD, and I'm going to try to show some clips tomorrow at lunch. Some of you are on that DVD as little children, and we see you running around quite a bit on it also. And I'm going to try to get that edited. I just didn't have time at home. But those of you that knew me in 2000, that was the real me. I was high every day on life. I was never in a bad mood. Everything was really pretty good. That wasn't a show. That's the way I was. And to go from that to wanting to kill myself or begging God to take my life was rough. Job went through it. Look what Job says. After this, Job cursed the day of his birth. I did too. I told God, why did you make me if you're going to break me? That's what Job was doing. Let the day perish on which I was born. Why did I not die at birth? Because I tell you, if you don't have your mind, it doesn't matter how many blessings that you have. Like, I had not lost anything out here. Nobody had died. I hadn't lost my job. Everything out here was okay. But I tell you, if you don't have your mind, I'd rather be paralyzed than not have my mind. Because I could enjoy nothing. And I don't know too many people that were as depressed as I was that have not taken their life. Since I started sharing this, Lisa and I we decided we're going to share the good, bad, and the ugly in our lives. And I will talk to people often about depression. In fact, I'm here for the weekend. If you need to talk to me, I'm here. And the rates are really good. It's like $40 just joking. But I'm here. But when I talk to people on depression, I will sometimes ask them, do you have any good days? Sometimes yes, sometimes no. I say, do you have any good hours? They go, yeah. I had none. No sunset was beautiful. No baby was cute. My wife wasn't pretty. I couldn't even love anymore. And some people are in depression and they deny it. I couldn't deny it. You saw my face. I couldn't go back to school. By the way, if you do deal with depression, but we don't know it, I think you need to get some help. But at least you can go through the motions. And that's big. You know, the term fake it till you make it, that's not a bad expression. Because it took me a long time before I could go through the motions. And when you can start doing that, you're making steps. I'm not saying that's where you got to stop. The psalmist says, I'm weary with my moaning. By the way, in depression, I was really mad at God, but the Psalms were the only book I could read. These depression Psalms. I didn't read the uplift like the stuff that David read. I didn't read that. I read this stuff. Every night I flood my bed with tears. That's what I do too, God. I drench my couch with weeping. David knows how I feel. Why don't you help us out here? My eyes waste away because of grief. This is real. In America, depending on the year, close to a fourth of the United States will go through some type of depression in their life. That many will not go through what I did, but it'll be tough. That's between 50 and 60 million Americans, depending on the particular year. Now, going through what I went through, where it's really severe, major episodes of bipolar, schizophrenia, 6% sounds low, unless you're one of the 15 million. Well, that's not 6%. That's low. I tell you, 0.00001% is high if it's you. Let's break that down here at Carbon-Emery. Let's say on Sunday we have 50 people. 10 to 12 will probably have to experience some depression in their lives. So you think about tomorrow, if we have about 50, 60 people, think about 10 to 15 of them will. Severe depression, probably at least 3 will go through something similar to what I've been through. So see, that really speaks to it. This hits us everywhere. Now, sometimes depression is circumstantial. Mine was not. Nothing had happened. That can be good or bad. It just, everything's relative. Sometimes people have circumstantial depression. Sometimes it's having low self-esteem. Sometimes it's being ridiculed and bullied as they've grown up, and that they just deal with that all the time. And we see that in schools. The kids, they've been sad their entire lives because they've been put down. The first 5 years or so of your life, your parents convince you that you can sing, that you're pretty, that you can run fast, that you can draw good, and then your parents do the worst thing they could do to you. They send you to school where you're assaulted, and now you don't think you can sing. You don't think you're pretty. You don't think you can run fast. Sadly. Rejection, not having friends, having no one around you to reach out to. Sometimes it's a tragedy that sends you there. And these are all, I can understand how these could cause that, but mine was not circumstantial. It just, everything was fine. It could be coveting what you don't have. It could be that sometimes people that are poor, we had some poor girls at a church I used to preach at, and they were depressed because they couldn't have, they didn't want to be rich, they just wanted to have a middle class standard of living like you have. Just be regular. And they didn't. Their parents were drug addicts, and they didn't have nice things. And they couldn't have that. It wasn't a bad coveting. I don't mean the bad coveting. It's just like, why can't we have a nice dress to wear? Drugs and alcohol can lead to that. Now let's talk about marijuana and depression, because some people have talked about how marijuana has medical benefits, and I think that could possibly be true. I think it is important to realize, it sounds kind of funny for us Bible teachers to say, God did create it. Sounds funny, doesn't it? God made marijuana. So there's something about it. That doesn't mean it's supposed to be taken recreationally, okay? God made poison ivy leaves, but I'm not going to smoke them. It really irritates the lungs, all that itching inside. There are some benefits to marijuana and depression. It may reduce depression in the short term. Yes, if you're high, you may not be depressed. But then you're going to come down from that, and everything's where it was. It may relieve anxiety temporarily. And I can see, had I been a drinker, and even moderately, I'm not, I've always been a teetotaler, or if I had used marijuana in moderation, I can see how that would have been real tempting to me in my depression, because you need some relief. But the problem, even though it may reduce stress, here are the risks. Higher levels of psychiatric disorder. In fact, one doctor told me that he has seen that people that use marijuana regularly have a 70% greater chance of depression. And I tell you, if you could have walked in my shoes for one day, you wouldn't even want to say the word marijuana. You'd run from it. It can create psychological dependence, long-term memory loss, as we just mentioned that one, and it may develop cannabis, whatever that is, syndrome. And that's where you're throwing up and dehydrated and really sick all the time. So that's what that does. So I would recommend to stay away from that. There's all types of mental disorders and depressions, anxiety, where there's probably someone in this room, you feel tension just sitting here. Some people are in a room like this and they feel very alone. You can be in a crowded room and feel all by yourself. They're anxious just being out like this. Bipolar disorders, where one day you're on top of the world and you're Superman, and the next day you're ready to kill yourself. Sleep-wake disorders, obsessive compulsive disorders. You have to arrange something a certain way. You have to touch something before you can move on with something. Eating disorders, and of course the one that I had. And so, because I had such a great life going, I really felt like God had protected me, because I was not very strong. You know, I was always upbeat. In fact, Job even had this said to, the devil said this to God. No wonder he follows you. Didn't you put a hedge around him? And I really felt like God had protected me, because he wanted to keep me upbeat so I could help keep other people upbeat. Because McPherson's happy all the time. Because I thought, I'll fold on a depression. I've had it so easy. I will collapse if I have a tragedy. So I felt like he was protecting me. But then in 2004, when I looked like this, I didn't feel that hedge of protection anymore. So it came all crumbling down. Along with that, I have nicknamed this next disorder. I may have to become a doctor one day. This is my nickname for this next one. I had what I have called an obsession of confession. During my depression, I had to confess everything I had ever done wrong. And I chose my wife to be that person. Now, I'd never run off with somebody or I'd never committed a crime or something, but let me tell you this. Nobody needs to hear everything you've ever said, done, and thought. But what my computer up here did, not only did it have those horrible little images, it replayed everything I had done wrong in my life. I had stuff from junior high school I had forgotten about. There it is. And I'm telling Lisa every bit of this. And I'm telling you, you tell your best friend everything you've ever said and thought and done, it will strain that relationship. Do that in a marriage, boys. And it was tough. And she had to deal with that. And she would have said, Mike, be quiet. Stop. Shut up. She said, one time I even went up to one of our elders and just started throwing out all this stuff, and she's going, be quiet. Because nobody needs to know everything we've ever done, said, and thought. I was mad at God. Nothing had happened. Why are you letting this happen to me? But here's the positive part. We're not going to end on that. If I left right now and said, sorry, hang in there, that'd be kind of depressing, wouldn't it? So here's how I came back. I got passed down from doctor to doctor to doctor. Nothing was working. No medication was working. Fortunately, when Lisa took me to another doctor, he would try for weeks to do some things and nothing would happen. He would pass me on to somebody else. We are so grateful. We could have been hoaxed out. We could have been scammed by doctors, loading me up on medication. Fortunately, we had some great people that passed me on. Finally got to a psychiatrist in our city, and he said, Mike, I can bring you back with ECTs, electroconvulsive therapy. This is where, because our brain does not develop enough serotonin, and that's stuff up in the chemicals in your brain that help keep you steady. What this electric compulsive shock therapy does, it scrambles everything up there. They don't even know why it works. People that say that this is immoral, you shouldn't do that, then I'm glad they weren't my doctor. Because this helped me come back. And it puts your brain into a seizure for 45 seconds. And I had these done at first 3 times a week, then once a month. And finally, after about 9 months, I was not clear of depression, but my depression hit in January. By that next fall, I was able to go to school and teach. The kids could not tell I was still in depression, but I could fake it. The people closest to me could still tell. But all day long, I was able to fake it till I could make it. But in case I forget this over the weekend, you cannot stay in your bed curled up. You've got to get out. I know at first I couldn't, but and I'll talk about that more later. But if you wait till you feel like it, that's probably never going to come. You have to go ahead and start going through motions. So that started a little bit of it. Secondly, diet. Because I could not enjoy a meal, Lisa just fed me a perfect meal. I ate perfectly every day. I lost 50 pounds. I was in perfect shape because we were exercising. It's the best shape I'd been in since I was a kid. I don't recommend depression for a weight loss program, but it certainly works. It did. And she exercised with me every day. Now, here's what you can't do. You got a spouse or a kid. You can't say, you're in depression, you need to go work out. You got to go with them. See, she went with me. We walked 5 miles a day. If it was a blizzard, if it was pouring down rain, we're out there. Now, I didn't really care. I'm depressed anyway. But I'm telling you, slowly eating right, exercising, those were baby steps that finally were able to start bringing me back. And this woman is, and I know a lot of you knew her, but she saved my life. She saved my life. That's why I wish I had died instead of her. We needed her more than me. And you don't have to amen that either. Okay. Meds, now I'm not a doctor. I can't recommend certain medication. I just know this. The medications that I took, they help regulate and stabilize. I know some people get hyped up on meds. They get overdosed. They get overprescribed. Well, fortunately, I didn't have that. I had doctors that kept me going in a good way. And then the routine that we were talking about. This guy here, David James, you can tell we both got mental problems right there. David is the greatest Vanderbilt sports fan that I've ever met. And he always has season tickets to basketball and football. And we've always gone to games together. Well, when I went into depression, I couldn't even go to church. I remember the first time we tried to go to church. And I'm the youth minister at this time. I can't go to school and teach. I couldn't coach. I sat on the bench. My son was a senior, so I sat on the bench and just stared out and watched the games. But we came to the church building. We pulled up in the parking lot, and I said, I can't go in. Let's go home. Then next time, we were able to go inside the building. I got inside the building and said, I got to go. I can't do this. Then the next time, I sat on the back row. But see, it was baby steps. The first step was driving to the parking lot. Second step, going inside the building. Okay? And it's just, but Lisa, she knew how to push and back off. She knew how to push and back off. So she said, you need to go to the ball game with David. I said, I don't want to go to the game. I don't care about the game. She said, you're going to the game. Okay. She had the power over me. And I remember David, this was incredible about David. He never acted like I was in depression. He acted totally normal. He'd talk about the game all the way to the game. I'm just sitting there. We'd watch the game. He'd make comment. I'm just staring there. On the way back, we're listening to the post-game show. Talking. He's talking. I'm just standing there. But you know, eventually I was able to go to the game. And then talk about the game. And then enjoy the game. But you got to get out. You've got to take the steps. You cannot wait till you feel like it. Do any of y'all, now this is for the older people in here. There's one or two people in here older than me. I don't know who you are. And I'm not staring at people in particular at this time at all. Does anybody remember the Faulkner-Burkeen marriage seminar series from the 90s and 80s? Remember that? Okay. Dr. Faulkner said something I've never forgotten. He said, act your way into a better way of feeling instead of feeling your way to a better way of acting. If you wait on the feelings, they're probably not going to come. But if you act, eventually they might come back. I never smiled, as I told you. I remember the first time I laughed was our AD. He was my boss, Coach Mike Roller, one of the greatest basketball coaches of all the guys that I've learned from. He's one of the few people I would have lunch with. There were only a few people. He was actually the only person that could come over to my house that had not been through a tragedy. The other people, I would only let somebody come over if they'd had a tough situation. I didn't want to see anybody that had it all together and everything was wonderful. Except for him. I let him. And we went out to eat, and we're coming back to our neighborhood, and in somebody's front yard there was a Civil War cannon. And Coach Roller said, McPherson, you think you got problems? They got to protect their house with a cannon. You know, that was risky for him to say that, because he's making fun of my depression, but it worked. I busted out laughing, and it felt so weird to laugh for the first time. And Coach Roller is, you know, when you're a coach, you make a lot of people, you make a lot of enemies. He's not a perfect guy, but he's the first person that got me to laugh, and he knows how I feel about that. Act your way to a better way of feeling rather than waiting to feel your way to a better way of acting. You do need somebody like this. You've got to have somebody supporting and pushing and helping you out. Finally, counseling and support and prayer and family. those last two cannot be understated at all. Lisa kept telling me that I'm going to come back. I never believed her. This was our home when this happened. And she said she had a vision. I don't mean where she went into a trance, but she had this picture that all around our house were angels. And she said they were interlocked and they were facing outward. And she said all their arms were interlocked to say that the devil is not coming in here. And she had that picture. I almost got an artist to paint that. I thought that would have been an incredible deal. Now, if you help someone through this or you go through it, recovery is not like when you break a bone, where it gets a little bit better every day. It doesn't work like that. It works like this. Here's me. Everything's fine. And then I wake up on January the 6th. Boom. Then I came back. But it wasn't linear. It was more like this. Okay? It's not going to happen where every day, today's better than yesterday. That's not going to happen. And this is a little thing that a doctor shared with me. All right? You see, on that day, that's a low. Okay? That's a low. But it's better than earlier highs. So the little expression was, today's low is better than yesterday's high. Now, I was down on this day, but maybe that's the day that I laughed. Back here, I'd never laughed, and nothing bad had happened that day, but that was a low day, but it was better than yesterday's high. I think that'll help you a whole lot right there. And so, for those of you that think that people can just snap out of it, this is a chemical imbalance. I hate the term mental illness. Mental sounds cloudy and ethereal, kind of dream-like. Look at the brain here, y'all. That's physical. We shouldn't call it mental illness. It ought to be called brain illness. Mental makes it sound like, just snap out of it, get busy, get a hobby, count your blessings. I did all that. I was busy. That didn't help. When you have a disconnect, like a wire, then it ain't the blues. Clinical depression is far deeper than that. This is a physical illness. What if we treated physical illness like mental illness? Hey, have you tried, don't have the flu. Don't get sick. Don't throw up. Get a hobby. I mean, here, I get that you have food poisoning and all, but you got to at least get up and make an effort. Y'all, it's the same thing. You wouldn't say that to a diabetic. Just think about insulin going through your body. We would never do that. You just need to change your frame of mind even though you lost your hand. Think good thoughts. At least you have another hand. Here's a person, they can't help it. They wash their hands 100 times a day. And you go, don't do that. Oh, I bet they hadn't thought of that one. That helps. You're right. I'll quit doing that. I was busy. Didn't help. And you cannot play the comparison game. On the church marquee, please, do y'all have a church marquee out there? Okay, probably good. But if you ever get one, okay, if Mark does a large donation and y'all get one there, please don't put this out there. You cannot imagine how offensive that is. You're too blessed to be depressed. Doesn't work that way. This is Phil Fight. He was our tech guy at Lipscomb when I was there. His little boy was 3 years old. One summer he was riding lawnmower, cutting the yard, and his little boy ran up behind him and he backed the lawnmower up and ran over his foot and cut off his foot. And you can see his son there in the middle. He's got a prosthesis there. Phil went into deep depression. And because I had been through it, he came to talk to me one day. And he was struggling. And we had just had a few years earlier those 2 kids in our youth group get killed. And I said to him, we lost 2 kids in our youth group. And their parents would love to trade with you. And you would not trade with them. But that doesn't take away your depression. The fact that he can go, my kid didn't die, I ought to feel lucky. It doesn't work that way. Okay? Yes, it's better to have your kid without a foot than them to be dead, of course. But you can't throw the emotional trauma out like that. That's not possible. That's not normal. As a youth minister back in the 80s and 90s, and I loved being a youth minister back in those days. That was just a great time to be a youth minister, especially in Nashville and Middle Tennessee. We were always talking to our kids about, be fired up for the Lord. Get fired up for God. Let's be fired up. Let's fight hell with a water pistol, y'all. Let's just... I don't teach that anymore. I'm not fired up. I'm in survival mode. I don't think you need to try to be fired up. If you are, that's great. Just wait. You won't be one day. I think we need to teach people to be faithed up. How much faith do you have to get there? Aren't you glad to say, unless your faith is like Mount Kilimanjaro, you will not enter the kingdom of heaven. It can't get much smaller than that. If you have the faith the size of a BB, you get in. You're not going to always be fired up. You're going to be like this. As we close, and we're going to stay on schedule, so I don't want to hear the ridicule that y'all have done on Mark. If you had told me in 2004, McPherson, if you'll hang on, the high school in 2 years is going to appoint you to be the head basketball coach. And in 2009, y'all are going to go to the state. And if you'll hang on, a few years after that, you're going to take another team to the state. And you're going to have grandkids that you will die for. I would have said, why are you making fun of me? None of that's going to happen. But it did. It happened. Don't ever give up, y'all. Don't throw in the towel. You don't know that you're not in the last inning, maybe. Okay? You're not in the last inning. And I just want to encourage you on that. Our next... I'm going to have to get to the end here. I'm not going to have time to finish that part up. But I'll kind of conclude some of this stuff in our next session, which I was going to go to the very end, which is, well, I thought maybe it's not. Oh, there we go. All right, so we're going to take a little break, and then we're going to talk about grief itself, grieving during loss, and it will not be as depressing as it sounds. Okay? So... Mr. David, do you need to tell anybody anything before we take a break here? Look, Mark, I was only 1 minute over. Look at that. Look at that. All right. I know. I don't want you to go through, I don't want to go through what you had to go through. I'm sorry. All right. We'll take a break here. That's awesome.